The courtroom didn't just go silent, it held its breath the moment she walked in. The billionaire's wife carried confidence like a weapon, certain Judge Judy would fold the way everyone else always had. But arrogance snaps fast under truth. The instant she leaned in and whispered a threat, the entire room shifted. The bailiff froze. Judy's eyes sharpened. She didn't need volume to take control. And within 30 seconds, the woman who entered like royalty was unraveling, terrified, and begging for a mercy she had never learned to give. But before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget the subscribe button. The courtroom breathes with a low, restless hum, the kind that slips under the skin before anyone understands why. And then she walks in, the billionaire's wife, turning every head without even trying. Not because of beauty, because of confidence so sharp it feels like a challenge. She glides to her table with the posture of someone who has never stood in a line, never waited her turn, never heard the word no spoken without consequences. The camera of the moment seems to follow her naturally, as if she has trained the world to look wherever she is. Her heels click like declarations across the polished floor, each one echoing her belief that this space, too, will bend for her. Judge Judy watches her quietly from the bench. No words, no movement, just a steady gaze that feels like a light being aimed at truth. But the wife does not notice, or pretends not to. She adjusts her designer jacket as though she is preparing for a photo shoot rather than a legal hearing. Across the room, the plaintiff stands smaller, almost swallowed by the weight of what brought her here. She clasps a stack of documents to her chest, as if they are both shield and burden. Her eyes flicker between fear and relief. Fear of the woman she once worked for, relief that she no longer must face her alone. "State your claim," Judge Judy says, her voice cutting through the air with its usual decisive calm. The assistant steps forward. Her voice is soft at first, the kind of softness that carries exhaustion rather than weakness. She explains months of unpaid wages, broken promises, midnight demands, and days spent walking on emotional glass. She speaks of signed contracts that vanished, agreements rewritten without consent, and a silence she endured because she needed the job. The billionaire's wife smiles through it all, that same slow, poisonous smile from the hook. The one that radiates entitlement, not amusement. She tilts her head as if listening to a mildly offensive joke rather than accusations under oath. "That is creative," she says, waving a manicured hand as though dismissing a rumor at a luncheon. Her tone is velvet, dipped in dismissal. "I paid her generously. She left because she could not handle real work." Judge Judy's eyebrow lifts a fraction of an inch, subtle but sharp. It is the kind of movement that signals danger to anyone paying attention. The wife is not. Instead, she straightens her shoulders and leans forward slightly, as if trying to reclaim ownership of the entire room through posture alone. The plaintiff's breath catches. She knows that look. It is the look that precedes cruelty spoken in polite tones. "What exactly are you smiling about?" Judge Judy asks, voice quiet enough to feel colder than anger. The wife's smile widens, slow and deliberate. She leans in, too close to the microphone, too close to reason, and she whispers something that freezes even the bailiff where he stands. Judge Judy's eyes narrow, not in anger, but in recognition, as the billionaire's wife finishes her whispered threat with a smile that should never have been seen inside a courtroom. The threat still hangs in the air like perfume, sweet-sounding, poisonous in meaning. Judge Judy does not move at first. She simply lets the silence settle, heavy and undeniable, until even the billionaire's wife begins to feel it pressing against her skin. Then, with a measured breath, Judy lifts her gaze. "Would you like to repeat that?" she asks. The billionaire's wife laughs, a soft, almost musical sound that tries to rewrite what she just did. She leans back in her chair, as though the courtroom is a stage, and she is performing for an audience far below her status. Her fingers trace the edge of her designer bag, not nervously, but lazily, as if to remind everyone that she could buy and sell half the room without blinking. "Oh, Judge," she says, quoting the title in condescension, "I think you misheard me. I was only joking." But the smirk she tries to hide betrays her. No one laughs, not even she does. The room senses the shift, the performance beginning to crack at the edges. Judge Judy tilts her head slightly, studying her the way a surgeon studies an X-ray before announcing what is broken. "Jokes," she says calmly, "do not usually come wrapped in malice." The wife's smile falters for a breath, then snaps back into place, tighter now, like a mask pulled too hard. Across the room, the assistant steps forward again. Her voice trembles, but her resolve does not. She explains how that same joking tone was used during late-night messages, sudden schedule changes, withheld pay, and the time she was threatened for asking why her hours had doubled without notice. Her words spill slowly, truth-finding courage as it finally enters a space where it will not be dismissed. The billionaire's wife waves her hand again. She exaggerates. "I have the contract right here. It proves everything." The document she lifts is pristine, too pristine. Fresh ink, crisp corners, a gleam that suggests recent printing rather than years of use. She sets it before Judge Judy with a flourish, as if placing a crown for her own coronation. Judy picks it up gently, examining the pages with that quiet patience that makes guilty people sweat. Her eyes move from date to signature to formatting. The room seems to lean in with her. "Interesting," she murmurs. The wife brightens, misreading the tone. "See? Finally." Judy turns a single page. The sound of the paper shifting is louder than her voice. "This signature," she says, tapping the page with a deliberate finger, "looks nothing like the one on your previous filings." A ripple moves through the courtroom, soft but unmistakable. The wife's laugh is smaller now. "Well, I signed quickly. Things blur together." "Not this much," Judy replies, her voice like cold steel. A beat of silence, then another. The assistant clutches her documents tighter, sensing the first fracture in the foundation of lies. Judge Judy lowers the contract, her expression unreadable, and says, "Tell me, why does your signature appear to be traced?" The question lands like a pin dropped in a cathedral, tiny, sharp, echoing longer than it should. For the first time, the billionaire's wife does not smile. Not fully. Her lips try, but the corners hesitate, caught between habit and fear. Judge Judy keeps the contract held lightly in one hand, as if it weighs nothing and everything at the same time. The fluorescent lights above flicker once, casting a brief shadow across the page, a shadow that seems to mirror the doubt spreading behind the wife's eyes. "I do not trace signatures," the wife says finally, voice brittle around the edges. "That is ridiculous." Judy does not respond. Not yet. She simply places the contract flat on the desk, aligning the corners with almost ceremonial precision. That stillness, that surgical calm, rattles the wife far more than raised voices ever could. Across the room, the assistant steps forward again. Her posture is straighter today, but her voice carries the tremor of someone who has lived too long in the quiet aftermath of someone else's power. "Her signatures changed all the time," she says softly. "Every time she wanted something to look, official." The wife snaps her head toward her. "Excuse me?" Her tone sharpens instantly, like a blade catching light. "You heard her," Judge Judy says, her voice balanced between inquiry and warning. "And I heard the tremor in your voice when you said that joke earlier, so let us continue." The wife tries to regain ground, smoothing her jacket, sitting taller. "This contract was signed 5 years ago. If my signature looks different today, that is normal aging. People evolve." "True," Judy replies, "but dates do not evolve. Ink does not evolve. Metadata does not evolve." The wife's breath stutters. Barely, but it stutters. Judy slides the contract toward the clerk. "This document looks recent. New paper, fresh toner, no signs of wear, not even a crease. You expect me to believe a contract handled for 5 years looks like it came out of a printer yesterday?" "That is exactly what I expect," the wife fires back, chin lifting. But the conviction does not match her eyes. Her gaze darts, first to the assistant, then to the judge, then to the empty space between them, as if searching for somewhere to place her confidence and realizing she no longer knows where to set it. The assistant holds her stack of documents tighter, knuckles pale against the paper. In her silence, there is something rising, a steadiness, a strength that had been waiting to breathe. Judge Judy leans forward slightly. "I have seen arrogance, I have seen intimidation, but what I do not tolerate is dishonesty dressed as confidence." The wife's jaw tightens. Her fingers begin tapping, rapid, nervous, betraying the calm she tries to wear like jewelry. Then, Judy lifts a second page, another signature, slightly shakier, slightly more hurried. "Explain the date," she says. The wife swallows. Hard. Because before she can form an answer, Judge Judy adds, "And while you are at it, explain why the signature on this page appears to be traced as well." The wife's silence stretches thin across the room, tight enough to snap. Her mouth opens, but no words arrive, only a flicker in her eyes, sharp and afraid, gone as quickly as it appears. Judge Judy does not look away. She lets the silence work, lets it expose what arrogance once hid. "Let me see your driver's license," Judy says suddenly. The request slices through the tension. The wife stiffens, trying to process the shift, but the bailiff is already approaching. Her hand trembles as she hands over the card, barely noticeable, but enough for the assistant to see. Enough to remind her that power, real power, does not tremble, only fear does. Judy compares the license signature to the two on the contract. She does not comment at first, but the contrast is obvious to anyone watching. On the license, fluid, confident strokes. On the contract, rigid lines, inconsistent pressure, hesitation buried under ink. The billionaire's wife feels the walls closing in. "I sign differently under stress," she blurts out. "Stress?" Judy echoes, not mocking, just dissecting. "This contract was supposedly signed 5 years ago. What stress were you under then?" The wife stares, caught between fury and panic. Before she can gather herself, the assistant speaks. Her voice is stronger now, steadier. "She changed signatures depending on what she wanted the documents to say. I saw her rewrite agreements more than once. When something did not benefit her, she made a new version." The room shifts, not loudly, but like a collective breath turning into understanding. The bailiff crosses his arms. The clerk looks down with raised brows. Even the cameras seem to pause, recording the unraveling of someone who believed she could choreograph truth itself. Judge Judy taps the disputed signature once with her nail, a tiny sound, but it hits like a hammer. "This is traced," she says, "not sloppy, not rushed, intentionally traced." The wife's mask breaks. "I did not trace anything." "Then you will not mind if we compare it to a known sample," Judy replies, already reaching for another file. She pulls out an older document, one the assistant submitted. Its signature is genuine, smooth, unmistakably hers. Side by side, the differences shout. The wife's breath quickens, her eyes blink too fast. Her carefully constructed calm begins to rattle like glass under pressure. "Enough," she snaps. "This is ridiculous. That girl," she points at the assistant with a shaking hand, "is lying. She is trying to ruin me." The assistant does not flinch. "You did that yourself." Judge Judy lifts a hand, quieting the courtroom before it erupts. Her voice drops, low, steady, unshakable. "Accusing her will not erase what you put on paper or what you said." "What I said?" The wife's voice cracks. Judy nods toward the clerk. "Play the recording." A hush sweeps the room, electric and breathless. The first audio clip begins, the wife's voice dripping with quiet cruelty. The recording opens with 6 words that flip the courtroom on its axis. "No one will ever believe you." The words spill out of the speakers like cold water dumped over the room. "No one will ever believe you." Her voice, smooth, deliberate, sharpened with the confidence of someone who has never lost a battle she cared to win. The billionaire's wife jolts upright as if the sound betrays her. "That is taken out of context," she snaps, her voice cracking on the last word. But no one looks convinced. Context does not change tone, and her tone comes through the speakers like velvet wrapped around a threat. Judge Judy lifts a hand, commanding silence. "Let it play." The recording continues. There's no anger in her voice, just an icy calm that reveals something far more dangerous: calculated control. "You work for me. You do what I say. If you cannot handle that, I can find someone who will, someone who knows how to keep their mouth shut." The assistant's shoulders tense. Her eyes glisten, but she does not look away from the defendant. She faces her past the way one faces a ghost, with fear, yes, but also relief that it no longer controls her. The wife tries to laugh, but it comes out strangled. "It was a stressful day. Everyone says things they do not mean." "Funny," Judy replies. "You sounded very calm." Her voice is soft, but the softness cuts deeper than any raised tone could. Another clip begins without warning. This time, the wife's voice drops lower, almost conspiratorial. "If you think anyone will take your word over mine, you are more naive than I thought." Gasps ripple across the courtroom like a wave hitting shore. The wife lunges forward. "Stop playing these. She recorded me illegally." Judy does not blink. "She recorded you because she feared retaliation. And judging by your behavior today, that fear was justified." The billionaire's wife's composure fractures. Her breath shortens, her fingers shake as she grips the edge of her table. Beneath the makeup, beneath the wealth, the exhaustion of maintaining a facade begins to bleed through. "She is lying," the wife screams, pointing at the assistant with unraveling desperation. "She wants money. That is all she has ever wanted." The assistant's voice breaks, not from weakness, but release. "I wanted respect and safety, and for you to stop threatening me every time I asked to be paid." Judge Judy turns toward the wife, slowly, like a storm deciding where to land. "I have one question," she says. "If these recordings are manipulations, why do you sound exactly the same here as you do in this courtroom?" The wife freezes, mouth open, trapped by her own reflection. "Because," Judy continues, her tone cold but steady, "this is not performance. This is who you are." The courtroom stays silent long enough for the truth to settle. Judy closes the file, lifts her eyes, and asks, "Would you like to explain why you threatened her employment if she ever spoke out?" Her voice does not rise. It does not need to. The question hangs in the air like a blade suspended by thread. The billionaire's wife searches for breath, for composure, for the polished persona she walked in wearing, but nothing fits anymore. Her smile is gone. Her poise is slipping, and her eyes flicker with the dawning fear of someone who just realized the room is no longer hers to command. "That recording," she stammers, "is taken entirely out of context. You cannot judge me based on fragments." Judge Judy folds her hands, elbows resting lightly on the bench. Her stillness is deliberate, the kind that makes people talk more than they intend. "I'm not judging the fragment," she says. "I'm judging the pattern." The wife swallows hard. "I was under pressure. My husband expected perfection. My staff had to maintain a standard." "Threatening someone is not a standard," Judy replies. "It is a choice." The assistant steps forward again, gripping a single piece of paper like a lifeline. Her voice trembles, but she stands firm. "I recorded her because I was scared. She told me more than once that she would destroy my reputation if I embarrassed her." The wife's head snaps toward her. "You were never in danger. You are being dramatic because you want money." But the words land without force. Even she hears the hollowness. Judy leans in slightly, her voice sharpening. "If you want us to believe you were joking, explain why your tone in the recordings matches your tone here. Dismissive, threatening, and entirely devoid of respect." The wife's breathing grows shallow. Sweat glistens along her temple despite the cool courtroom air. She tries to straighten her posture, but her shoulders slump instead. I do not remember saying half of that." "That," Judy says, "is the problem." For a moment, the room dims, not literally, but emotionally. It is the feeling of a performance ending, of a mask losing its hold. The wife's fingers close into fists, then release, then close again, a rhythm of panic. The assistant watches her with a mixture of pain and vindication, not triumph, just the deep ache of someone finally being believed after shouting into silence for far too long. Judy nods to the clerk. "Play the second clip." "No," the wife slams her palm on the desk. The sound echoes like a cracking floorboard. "You are twisting this into something it is not." The clip plays anyway. Her voice fills the room again, colder, quieter, unmistakably calculated. "If you make me look bad, I will make sure you regret it." The wife's eyes close. The words hit her harder than anyone else, because she cannot deny what she hears. When she opens her eyes, something in them has changed. The arrogance is still there, but thinner now, trembling at the edges like a candle in wind. Judge Judy gives her no escape. "I have one more question," she says, "and your answer will decide everything." The wife stiffens, bracing herself, or what remains of herself. Judy leans forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you erase the original contract?" Before the next moment unfolds, ask yourself this. If you were sitting in that courtroom, hearing those recordings, watching that mask begin to crack, would you stay silent, or would you speak up? The courtroom feels different now, tighter, heavier, as if the truth has begun rearranging the very air. Judge Judy's question still echoes through the space. Why did you erase the original contract? The billionaire's wife does not answer. She cannot. Her mind is scrambling for a version of events that does not exist. Then Judy breaks the silence again, gently, but with precision. Let us try something simpler, she says. Who wrote the contract you brought here today? The wife seizes on the question like a lifeline. I did, she says quickly, too quickly. Years ago, before any of this. Judy nods slowly, as if considering the answer. I see. Then she turns to the clerk. Bring me the metadata report. The wife blinks. The what? The clerk approaches with a thin printout, its edges fluttering as if aware of the tension it carries. Judy accepts it, scanning the page with the calm patience of someone who already knows what she will find. Her eyes move once across the data, then she lifts her gaze. This document, she says, holding it up between two fingers, was created 14 days ago. Gasps erupt, not dramatic ones, but the sharp inhales of people who suddenly understand they have been watching a slow-motion collapse disguised as confidence. The wife's face drains of color. That is impossible. That must be wrong. The report was generated by the software you used, Judy replies. Metadata does not lie. People do. The assistant's breath catches. Her hands tremble, not from fear now, but from the overwhelming rush of long-awaited validation. She turns her head slightly, her eyes meeting the wife's, not in triumph, but in heartbreaking recognition of the damage done. The billionaire's wife shakes her head violently, rejecting reality. She set me up, she screams, pointing again at the assistant. She hacked something. No, Judy says, cutting through the spiral with a single word of grounded authority. This has nothing to do with her. Her voice softens just enough to feel dangerous. You forged that contract, and you did it very recently. The wife opens her mouth, but nothing comes out, only a trembling breath. The performance that once held the room hostage is disintegrating in real time. Her shoulders fall, her eyes dart from exit to exit, searching for a way out that does not exist. Judy places the forged contract aside, as if clearing space for the truth. You brought a fraudulent document into my courtroom? That's not just disrespectful, it is dishonest at a level that undermines everything you have said. The wife sinks slowly into her chair, the weight of exposure pressing her downward. She tries to speak again, but the words crumble on contact with reality. Judy leans back, her expression unreadable. Given that revelation, she says, we need to talk about fraud. The room freezes, every face turned toward the woman who once entered with a smile sharper than steel. Judge Judy folds her hands, her tone deceptively calm. And I assure you, we are only just beginning. The courtroom feels warmer now, not in temperature, but in tension. A kind of heat rises from the shift nobody expected, the shift everyone feels. The billionaire's wife no longer owns the room. Judge Judy does. The wife sits rigid in her chair, fingers trembling against the polished wood. She tries to hold herself upright, but her poise is slipping through her hands like sand. The contract lies on the desk before her, exposed, fraudulent, undeniable. A monument to a lie she thought would be unbreakable. Judge Judy studies her with a silence that feels heavier than any accusation. Let us go back, she says finally. You said the contract was signed 5 years ago. You said the terms were clear. You said the assistant agreed. Each statement lands like a gavel strike. The wife straightens suddenly, desperation flaring. I misspoke earlier. I meant that the agreement was 5 years old, not the printed contract. I updated the formatting so it would be readable for court. Judy does not blink. Readable? She lifts the paper between them. This is not an update. This is a reconstruction. The assistant looks down at her hands, the emotion hitting her in waves. She spent years being silenced, doubted, dismissed, but now truth is unfolding in front of her like a sunrise she never thought she'd see. Judy keeps going, steady as a scalpel. You did not update it, you rewrote it, and if you rewrote the contract, we must assume the original contained terms you found inconvenient. The billionaire's wife's face tightens, her jaw trembling with the attempt to hold on to the last pieces of control. I did not rewrite anything. You are twisting this into something it is not. No, Judy says softly. I am untwisting it. The words strike with surgical precision. The courtroom watches the wife unravel, her breathing faster, her eyes darting, her hands restless. Her voice rises again, brittle and clipped. She is lying. She has always been lying. She made mistakes and blames me because I expected competence. The assistant lifts her eyes. I made mistakes because I was exhausted, she whispers. You changed my hours constantly. You yelled at me for things you never even told me to do. You threatened to fire me if I did not work overtime without pay. Lies, the wife snaps, but her voice breaks on the word. Judy leans forward, her expression unmoving. You know what I find interesting? People who tell the truth rarely panic when confronted with it. You do. The wife recoils as if struck, and then Judy delivers the turning point, quiet, devastating. There is one more piece of evidence you forgot about. The wife freezes. What? What evidence? Judy closes the file softly, the sound more powerful than any slam. Her eyes lock onto the wife's, sharp and steady. Someone in your home, Judy says, has already told us the real story. The room holds still, suspended in the echo of Judge Judy's words. Someone in your home has already told us the real story. The billionaire's wife stiffens, her breath catching like a snag in fabric. For the first time, she looks genuinely afraid, not angry, not defensive, but afraid in a way that seeps through the surface she has fought to protect. Judge Judy nods to the clerk. Bring up the clip. A monitor flickers to life at the side of the courtroom. The light from the screen washes across the wife's face, bleaching the color from her cheeks. She whispers, barely audible, No, that is impossible. The footage begins. It is grainy, captured from a camera positioned in a walk-in closet, shelves lined with designer bags, shoes arranged like trophies. In the center of the frame stands the billionaire's wife, not polished, not poised, rehearsing. She practices her courtroom face, pulling her mouth into a soft, trembling frown. Then she tries indignation, eyebrows raised, lips parted in offended surprise. Then she tries tears, blinking rapidly, forcing her voice into a brittle tremor. She switches personas like outfits, calm, concerned, victimized, powerful, fragile. The courtroom watches, stunned, as she rehearses sympathy the way others rehearse choreography. The wife lunges forward. Turn that off! That is authentic, Judy says sharply. Very. The assistant's hand lifts to her mouth, not to hide a smile. There is no victory here, but to contain the emotional whiplash of seeing the truth exposed so nakedly. Her eyes well, not from triumph, but from the ache of validation that comes too late to undo the years she spent doubting her own reality. On screen, the wife continues rehearsing. Your Honor, she is lying. Your Honor, I never raised my voice. Your Honor, she is unstable. The courtroom murmurs. Even the bailiff's expression cracks into quiet disbelief. Judge Judy studies the wife like a portrait finally coming into sharp focus. This, she says, gesturing toward the footage, is not preparation, it is manipulation. You crafted an entire performance intended to mislead this court. I was nervous, the wife whispers, voice collapsing. I did not know how to act. Judy tilts her head. You did not know how to act like yourself? A tremor runs through the wife's body. Her persona, the glamorous veneer, the effortless superiority, begins peeling away, revealing someone far more fragile beneath, someone who believed image mattered more than truth, someone terrified of being seen for who she really is. The footage ends abruptly, the screen cutting to black. Silence follows, a silence thick with judgment, disbelief, and something else. Pity. Not for her actions, but for the emptiness that drove them. The wife sinks back into her chair, her eyes glassy and unfocused. She looks smaller now, almost swallowed by the enormity of the lie collapsing around her. She lifts her head, voice trembling as she whispers the only question she can form. Who sent you that? Watching her mask fall apart piece by piece, you can almost feel the weight of every lie she built her world on. So ask yourself, should remorse soften judgment, or does accountability matter more than apology? The courtroom feels colder now, as if the temperature has dropped with the truth. The billionaire's wife sits frozen, staring at the blank monitor where her own rehearsed performance disappeared moments ago. Her hands tremble in her lap. Her breath falters. The brittle shell she carried into the courtroom, flawless, expensive, untouchable, is cracking under its own weight. Judge Judy breaks the silence with gentle precision. "Why does someone rehearse innocence," she asks, "if they already have it?" The wife flinches as if struck. She tries to answer, tries to gather the remnants of her confidence, but the words catch in her throat. I was preparing. I needed to be ready. People want to tear me down because of who my husband is." A soft murmur ripples through the audience, not mocking, not cruel, just disbelieving. Judy leans forward, hands folded, eyes calm. "Do you hear yourself? You were not preparing to tell the truth. You were preparing to control how the truth looked." The wife's shoulders fold inward. She presses a hand to her forehead, dragging in a shaky breath. "You do not understand what it is like. Image matters. She stops herself. The word hangs, unfinished, but the meaning reverberates through the room. The assistant watches her with wide, conflicted eyes. For the first time, she is seeing something she never imagined she would. Not arrogance, not cruelty. Fear. Judy notices. "Are you afraid of your husband?" The question slices through whatever remained of the wife's composure. Her eyes snap up, wide, glassy, unguarded. She hesitates, too long for denial, too short for confidence. "I am not afraid," she whispers, but her voice betrays her. Judy does not press, not yet. "Let us return to your behavior with the plaintiff. You manipulated her schedule. You withheld pay. You threatened her reputation if she did not comply. That is not pressure. That is control." The wife shakes her head, but the movement is weak, unfocused. "You do not know what it is like living in a world where one mistake ruins everything." "The mistake," Judy replies softly, "was believing cruelty would protect you." The wife's breath trembles. A tear, small, reluctant, forms at the corner of her left eye. She wipes it quickly, as if even her own vulnerability is an inconvenience she cannot allow. The assistant speaks for the first time in minutes. "You made me feel like I was nothing," she says quietly. "I worked so hard. I tried so hard to do everything right." The wife squeezes her eyes shut. "I know," she whispers, the words leaking out like a confession not meant for air. Judy shifts, her voice lowering to something that feels more like truth than judgment. "Your mask is breaking because it was never meant to hold this much weight." The courtroom holds its breath. The wife opens her eyes, red, wet, terrified. The performance is gone. The persona is gone. What remains is a woman staring at the ruins of her own making. Judy asks quietly but unmistakably, "Who are you without the image he gave you?" The wife cannot answer. The question lands softly, but its impact ripples through the courtroom like a shock wave. "Who are you without the image he gave you?" The billionaire's wife doesn't answer. She can't. Her lips part, but sound refuses to follow. Her hands, delicate and perfectly manicured, grip the edge of the desk until her knuckles turn colorless. She stares at Judge Judy, but she isn't seeing her. She's staring through her, as if looking at a world that has suddenly gone unfamiliar. The courtroom waits. Judy doesn't rush her. She lets the silence work, lets it peel back layers far thicker than arrogance. Finally, the wife inhales, shaky, fragile, real. The words fracture. "I don't know who I am without him." A hush falls so deep it feels like the room itself is listening. Her voice breaks again, softer now, stripped of the practiced poise she wore like armor. "Everything I have, the clothes, the house, the name, it all came from him. And he expects perfection, control. He decides how I speak, how I act, who I can trust. If I make him look weak, he makes sure I pay for it." The assistant's breath catches. For a moment, sympathy flickers across her face. Not forgiveness, but recognition of another woman's captivity. Judy's expression doesn't soften, but something in her gaze grows sharper, clearer. "So your solution," she says quietly, "was to become him." The wife's head snaps up, eyes wide. I didn't mean to. I thought if I kept everything perfect, if no one questioned me, he wouldn't get angry. He wouldn't turn on me." Her hands begin to shake harder, the truth rushing out like a confession long buried. "He told me that people only respect strength, that kindness makes you weak. That if anyone challenged me, I had to silence them before they embarrassed me. Before they embarrassed him." The assistant closes her eyes, absorbing the chilling echo of a man she's never even met, a man who shaped the cruelty she endured. Judy leans in, voice low and piercing. "Listen to me carefully. Fear does not justify harm. Pressure does not excuse deceit. Pain does not grant permission to cause pain." A tear slips down the wife's cheek. She doesn't wipe it. "I know," she whispers. "I know. I didn't want to be this." She gestures vaguely at herself, at the persona collapsing in real time. "I thought if I kept control, if I stayed perfect, maybe he'd stay happy. Maybe he'd love me." The word love trembles out like a wound she's been denying. Judy's voice softens only in tone, not in strength. "You have spent so long being shaped by someone else that you forgot how to be accountable for yourself." The wife nods, a tiny, devastated motion. Her entire body seems smaller now, not physically, but emotionally. As though the force that once inflated her ego has finally drained, leaving behind only a woman lost in the shadow of a man who never truly saw her. Judy straightens, signaling the shift from empathy to truth. You hurt someone deeply, and being hurt yourself does not erase that. The wife looks at the assistant, really looks, and her face crumples with the first genuine remorse she's shown. "I'm sorry," she mouths, but the assistant doesn't answer. She isn't ready. Judge Judy taps her pen lightly, eyes narrowing with the precision of someone who sees deeper than the lie, deeper than the persona, deeper even than the confession. "There is," she says, "one more truth we still haven't uncovered." The wife's head snaps up. The confession doesn't leave the room. It settles into it, like dust finally finding a place to land after years of being kicked into the air. The billionaire's wife sits hunched, no longer performing, no longer fighting. Her mascara smudges in faint shadows beneath her eyes. Her hands, once steady instruments of control, now tremble openly on the desk. Judge Judy watches her for a moment, not with pity, but with a kind of measured understanding, the kind that acknowledges pain without letting it rewrite responsibility. "The truth," Judy says quietly, "is not a weapon, but hiding it often becomes one." The wife closes her eyes as if the words sting more than any accusation she's faced so far. The courtroom is silent except for the faint hum of the lights overhead, harsh white bulbs that suddenly feel too bright for the vulnerability spilling out here. The assistant inhales shakily. She steps forward, her voice soft but threaded with years of exhaustion. "Do you know what it felt like," she says, "to work for someone who changed moods like weather? Who smiled at me in front of guests but threatened me the second the door closed?" The wife opens her eyes, not defensive this time, but wounded by her own reflection. "I was trying to survive," she whispers. "So was I," the assistant replies. The words hang between them. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just truth meeting truth. Judge Judy leans back slightly, giving the moment space, but not escape. "Your confession gives context," she says, "but it does not erase the harm. It does not restore what was taken from her." The wife nods, shoulders crumpling inward as though bracing for impact. "I know," she murmurs. "I know. I didn't realize how far I'd gone until I saw myself in this courtroom." Her voice breaks, cracking open a grief that feels deeper than the circumstances. Grief for years lived pretending, for choices she made while trying to avoid being hurt herself. Judy's gaze sharpens. Harm caused by fear is still harm, and fear you refused to confront became the cage you trapped her in. The assistant wipes at her cheek, steadying herself. "I lost sleep for months. I lost friends because I was always on call. I lost my self-confidence because you made me believe every mistake was proof that I wasn't worth anything. The wife flinches, tears slipping freely now. I'm sorry, she whispers again, but the words are fragile, barely formed. Judy lets the apology land, but she does not let it excuse. Sorry is honesty, she says. Accountability is action. The courtroom breathes as if it has been holding its lungs tight for hours. The wife wipes her face with trembling fingers. What happens now? Judy studies her, not the persona, not the fear, but the woman emerging beneath the wreckage of her own choices. I will tell you, Judy says, after we address one final consequence you have not yet faced. The wife's head snaps up, eyes widening. Judy reaches for a file not yet opened, a thin envelope with a single sheet inside, and says, "This is the part you never prepared for." The thin envelope sits between Judge Judy's hands like a boundary line, the past on one side, the consequences on the other. The billionaire's wife watches it with wide, unblinking eyes, as though it contains something radioactive, something that could finish what little remains of the persona she has already shed. Judy breaks the silence with a calm that feels colder than anger. We have addressed your behavior, she says, but now we need to address the damage. The wife straightens instinctively, the old posture flickering back for a moment before collapsing under the weight of everything she's confessed. Damage? She repeats, voice soft, brittle. Judy opens the envelope. Inside is a single sheet, a neatly printed financial breakdown, color-coded, itemized with haunting clarity. Overtime, hours unpaid, reimbursements withheld, last-minute schedule changes that forced the assistant into extra shifts she was never compensated for. And at the bottom, written in red, total financial loss, $18,642. Judy sets the paper down gently, as if the truth deserves a soft landing even when it hits hard. The assistant's breath hitches. Seeing it in print, seeing her struggle reduced to lines and numbers, strikes her more deeply than any confrontation has. Her eyes fill again, but this time the tears are different. Recognition, validation, the sudden overwhelming realization that she had not imagined the burden she carried. The wife stares at the document as though reading a stranger's sins. I didn't know it was that much, she whispers. Judy's eyes narrow just enough to signal she's not accepting that. You knew you weren't paying her what she earned. The wife swallows hard, guilt tightening her voice. I kept telling myself it would even out, that I'd make it up to her later. You didn't, Judy replies, and she struggled because of you. The assistant steps forward, voice shaking but firm. I had to borrow money to pay rent. I took a second job on weekends. I stopped going to therapy because I couldn't afford it anymore. I told myself you'd fix it eventually. The wife presses her fingers to her lips, her shoulders trembling. I never wanted to ruin you, she whispers. I was drowning myself. I thought if I focused on appearances, on staying ahead of everything, everything else would fall into place. It didn't, Judy says. It fell on her. The words settle heavily, the final weight needed to anchor the truth. The wife crumples forward, elbows on the desk, face in her hands. I'm sorry, she sobs. Not performative, not calculated, but raw and shaking. Judy allows the moment, then lifts her voice with the solemnity of judgment. You will repay every cent, including damages. The wife nods without hesitation, the first act of real accountability she has shown. But Judy isn't finished. Before we finalize, she says, lifting her gaze, there is one more document you brought into this courtroom that we need to address. The wife freezes. Judy pulls the forged contract closer. And this time, we will talk about intent. The forged contract sits before Judge Judy like a quiet accusation, its crisp edges far too sharp for something that was supposed to be 5 years old. The billionaire's wife stares at it as if her gaze alone could make it vanish. But the truth has weight now, real, immovable, and the persona she built around herself is no longer strong enough to lift it. Judge Judy taps the corner of the document once. The sound is small, but it breaks the room wide open. Let's talk about what you intended when you brought this into my courtroom. The wife swallows, throat tightening. I just wanted to clarify things, to show what the agreement was supposed to look like. Supposed to? Judy repeats. Or convenient to? The wife's lips tremble, her mask is gone, and with it, the carefully curated veneer of the billionaire's world. What remains is a woman stripped to the truth, fragile, exhausted, terrified of herself more than anyone else. You rewrote this contract, Judy continues, because the real one did not support the story you wanted to tell. The assistant shifts slightly, her hands folded, her eyes lowered. She isn't angry anymore. The storm inside her has quieted. What's left is something gentler, but deeper. The slow, painful release of long-held tension. The wife's voice cracks. I didn't mean to deceive the court. I just couldn't let it look like I failed. My husband, he believes failure means weakness. Your husband isn't here, Judy says, and the person you hurt most was. The wife's breath breaks. A sob catches, then escapes, the kind she can no longer hold back. She covers her face with trembling hands, not dramatic tears, not rehearsed sorrow, real collapse. You spent years living under someone else's expectations, Judy adds, her tone softer but unyielding, and then you turned those expectations into weapons against people who depended on you. The assistant looks up. Her eyes meet the wife's, not with hostility but with a quiet ache. I didn't want to hurt you, she says. I just wanted to stop hurting. The wife sobs harder. Judge Judy lets the moment sit, lets the humanity linger, then leans forward again. This last piece, she says, lifting the forged contract, tells me something important. You didn't just lie in fear. You lied because you thought you could control the outcome. The wife freezes, the words hitting a truth she never wanted to voice. And now, Judy continues, you must face the outcome you tried to control. The courtroom stills. The wife wipes her eyes with shaking hands, struggling to breathe through the weight of everything crashing down at once. What happens next? She asks, barely audible. Judy closes the contract with quiet finality. Next, she says, comes judgment. The gavel remains untouched, but the air shifts as if it has already struck. The courtroom waits for Judge Judy's ruling the way a held breath waits for release. The billionaire's wife sits small in her seat, no longer grand, no longer curated, just human. Her shoulders curl inward, her hair clings to the tracks of her tears. She no longer tries to hide her fear. She no longer tries to be anything. Judge Judy speaks with the steadiness of someone who has spent her life holding truth and consequence in equal measure. Here is my judgment. A hush ripples across the room. You will repay the full amount owed, she begins, voice unwavering. Every hour she worked, every dollar you withheld, every overtime shift you dismissed as unimportant. The wife nods slowly, accepting each word like a stone placed in her palm. In addition, Judy continues, you will pay damages for emotional coercion and manipulation. Another nod, another stone. And you will provide a written acknowledgement outlining your misconduct, not as a performance, not as an apology wrapped in excuses, but as truth. The wife's breath shudders. I will, I promise. Judy studies her carefully. Promises, she says softly, mean nothing unless followed by action. The assistant watches from her seat, tears shining in her eyes, not from vengeance, but from the profound relief of finally being seen, finally being heard, finally having her world put back into alignment. Judy turns to her. You deserved better than what you were given, and today you get something she never offered you.